My dear brothers and sisters in the risen Lord, second week of Lent, Friday, 21/3/2025. God is the poet of the world, with tender patience leading it by his vision of truth, beauty, and goodness, said by Whitehead A.N. There's a story being said about a man who disregarded God's offer of salvation many times. A man who was a fervent devotee of God presumptuously believed that no matter what happens, God would save him miraculously because of his piety. One day there was a heavy downpour and it began to flood. The flood water began to get into the house and people were evacuated. When the municipality approached him and asked him to get on the lifeboat, he refused, saying, "The providence of God will save me." After some time, when the flood water reached the roof, this man climbed the first floor of his house. Again, a rescue boat came, some people came. A rescue boat carrying some people came to save him, but he refused. Finally, at the end of the day, when the flood water submerged the entire house, this devotee of God stood neck deep on the rooftop of his house. Even at that moment, a special motorboat was sent for him to escape. He refused, saying, "Thank you, plus, I trust in God. He will never let me down. He is just testing me. He is just testing me." You carry on. When the man drowned and went to heaven, the first thing he did was to complain to God. "I trusted you. Why did you not save me?" God said to him, "I sent 3 boats to save you, but you refused to budge." In today's gospel, Jesus narrated this parable of the wicked tenant to bring out the idea of God's patience and the continual rejection of God's offer of salvation by the wicked Israelites. Let's note 1. The long-suffering patience of God. The Israelites were the chosen people of God. God chose them from among the many nations, and not because of the intrinsic goodness, but because He could cry them and He honored them by them. And He honored by when God made the Israelites the descendants of Abraham, when He called them out from bondage in Egypt under the leadership of Moses, and when He made His covenant with them at Mount Sinai, it was then that God rented out a vineyard to them. He expected returns from them by way of obedience, of faithfulness, but they frequently failed by going behind other gods and by playing harlot to Yahweh. God periodically sent His servants, the prophets and the holy men and women, but they mistreated them. They beat the prophet Jeremiah, killed the prophet Isaiah, and stoned the prophet Zechariah in the temple. God was still patient with them. He sent John the Baptist before sending His only begotten Son, and they begetted. They who had choked their hands in the blood of the prophets continued viciously in seeking more blood of the servants of God. They who began with the killing of the servants of God never ever stopped with the Son of God. Sin, when unchecked, makes a ruthless progress in the sinners, harden them. When the people despised and rejected God's due from them, God sent His only begotten Son as a means. God would not reject Israel until He sent His only Son. God preserved in His goodness even when prophets were violently rejected and killed. 2. The great sin of Israel. More than the infringement of Moses' law, the great sin of Israelites was the rejection and murder of God's only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Their sin never reached so high as when they crucified God's beloved Son on the Mount Calvary. The Jews had all the required opportunities to come to consciousness of Jesus' divine mission as Nicodemus had, but they repudiated them. Nicodemus came to Jesus by night and said to Jesus, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God. For no one can do these signs that you apart from the presence of God. John chapter 3 verse 2. The ancient prophecies, the appointed time. The ancient prophecies, the appointed time, the signs, miracles, and the teaching performed by Jesus and the testimony of John the Baptist pointed the one fact that Jesus was the long expected Messiah. Disregarding all these signs, the Jews treated him with contempt and finally killed him outside of the city gates. In rejecting Jesus, they had rejected the last and greatest offer of God's salvation. In rejecting that Jesus, the Messiah, nation had sealed its doom. In rejecting Jesus, the Jewish nation had sealed its doom. It was rejected and destroyed in 70 AD when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Roman army under Titus. The old dispensation of the Jews was destroyed. The new dispensation inaugurated by Jesus was planted and given to the Christians. The vineyard is given to us now, and we have to bear the required fruits. If the Jews do not bear fruit, the Gentiles will. God's church will not stand still. If we abuse God's privileges and disregard His offer of salvation, He will disregard us and offer His salvation to others who will bear fruit. May God bless you all. Amen.